Joining me now, Democratic Congressman Bobby Scott of Virginia, who co-chaired the Overcriminalization Task Force in the last Congressman. And Congressman Scott, you voted against the crime bill back in 1994. Is that correct?
I did.
You were not you were not in the minority, I think, of the Democratic Party, but there were a lot of Democrats who voted for it. The president pushed it very hard. Why'd you vote against it?
Well, it made the wrong choices. The choice that was made was to codify slogans and sound bites, very popular sound bites, but it just all it did was just loaded up the prisons. If we made a choice to follow the evidence, follow the research, we'd have made other choices. It had things like abolishing parole and 3 strikes and you're out, mandatory minimums, things that have loaded up the prisons to the point now there have been studies that say we have so many people in prisons in the United States that our incarceration rate is actually counterproductive. That is to say that so many people in prison, you're messing up so many families, you're wasting so much money, you got so many people with felony records have trouble getting jobs, that you're actually adding to crime rather than reducing crime.
So why did members of the Democratic Party and a Democratic president, Bill Clinton, why'd they push it? Why'd they pass it? Was it just politics? Was it just pandering?
Well, you'll have to ask them why they voted for it. I'm explaining why I voted against it.
Well, but you know, you were there. You heard what the arguments were. I mean, here, let me give you the most cynical interpretation. We're the Democratic Party. People think we're soft on these criminals, that we're, that we coddle them. We get beat by the Republicans who bang us over the head with law and order. We're going to show how tough we are. We're going to prove to America how tough we are, and that's what this bill's about.
Well, you'll have to ask somebody who voted for it. All of the evidence was, we said 3 strikes you're out, for example, was the best vote-getting slogan or soundbite during the 1994 election cycle. #1 best vote-getting slogan. Said beat anything you can say about Social Security, health care, or anything else. But if you studied it, there's no evidence that it does anything to reduce crime, and yet it would load up the prisons and get us to the point where our incarceration rate is counterproductive. We know if we'd made a different choice, follow the evidence. If you want to reduce violent crime, you have to get young people out of the cradle-to-prison pipeline and getting them into the cradle-to-college and career pipeline. We know that if you make the investments early, get young people on the right track, keep them on the right track, you can reduce crime and save money. But it doesn't poll as well. Putting people in, as the Children's Defense Fund calls it, the cradle-to-prison pipeline, you get people into that, and it polls well, but it doesn't make any sense.
Kweisi Mfume, your colleague in Congress, back when he was in Congress in the 1990s as well, he told me last night, he sort of called out Harry Reid, who talked about we need to reassess this, basically said, look, Democratic Party had huge majorities in both houses and a Democratic president for 2 years, and there was not anything done to reform criminal justice. Is he right?
Well, I think there's a consensus now about reforming the criminal justice system. I think a lot of people have figured out that we're wasting a lot of money and not reducing crime as we should. We had last year I was part of a overcriminalization task force, a bipartisan effort, and we're developing legislation based on those findings. Those who are in prison get out. We want to make sure they're less likely to commit a crime when they leave than when they came in. Sentencing reform to make sure that the sentences fit the crime and not the draconian sentences that often violate common sense. And also a preventive approach to get young people on the right track and keep them on the right track. That kind of reform, I think, not only can significantly reduce crime, but it can save a lot of money. And you get people on the left and the right that have come to the conclusion that we can do better than we're doing. And I think we're going to have good support for a criminal justice reform legislation.
Congressman Bobby Scott of Virginia, thank you very much. 2 statistics I wanted to share. 46% increase in prisoners sentenced to more than a year under Bill Clinton. More than 50% increase in the black prison population. That happened in the 1990s. We also saw the violent crime rate fall over the 1990s and continue to fall in 2011. Okay, I mentioned my conversation with former Maryland Congressman Kweisi Mfume about the realities and politics of criminal justice reform. During that conversation, Mr. Mfume indicated that the 1994 crime bill was passed in the House by a voice vote, not a detailed roll call vote that would have preserved every member's position. But the final vote on the crime bill was a roll call vote. It passed the House 235 to 195, with the vast majority of yes votes coming from the Democrats, including then Congressman Mfume. He voted for the crime bill. Mr. Mfume tells All In tonight that he was referring to the initial House vote on the crime bill, which was passed by voice vote before being sent into a conference committee with Senate negotiators.